So the Pokemon world is really weird in how it's extremely interesting by nature. Like, how would an ecosystem of all these weird creatures function? Or how would a government run by an 11-year-old work? Or did anyone ever notice how shady this place was? The official games never talk about this and leave just the most minimalistic amount of lore possible for us to play with. But that's where ROM hacks like Rocket Edition come in. I do want to quickly say that I'm not the most experienced with ROM hacks or the ROM hack community. The only Pokemon ROM hacks I've played start to finish were Ash Gray and Adventures, and that was a while ago. But I still have to say, Rocket Edition is basically just like the perfect fan game in my eyes. So this game is basically Fire Red, except you play as a rocket grunt. So like I said earlier, the original game was really bare bones in the lore department, but Rocket Edition adds a ton of world building in really clever ways without ever infringing on the actual canon. One way it does this, and I really love this, is that it incorporates really popular fan theories. For example, the fear that Blue's Eradicate died, or that there was a war between Kanto and Johto. And while in a lot of fan content, mentioning fears like this often feels pretentious or forced, it never does here. Going back to the examples, they don't just mention how Blue's Eradicate died, but also show how it affected his character and changed his outlook. They don't just mention the war, but also show the economic, social, and political devastation it had. Like, you ever wonder why there are so many gangs in Kanto? They use the war as an explanation, and also as a lot of character motivations. It's integral to the story, it's not just there for fan service. As someone who grew up watching Paper Mario's 7,000 Pokemon theory videos, and being completely engrossed with theory and creepypasta culture, this game feels like a love letter and was made just for me. And this sounds like a contradiction, but I don't think I'd be the only one to feel that way. At the same time though, I don't think that knowledge is necessary to enjoy the hack, because there's a ton of stuff that I never even heard of but still made me go, oh wow, that makes sense. The way it manages to do all this without ever disrupting canon is also really smart. You're not playing as a clueless 11-year-old, but a grown adult who's also a criminal. Of course a little kid won't notice how shady the cerulean daycare is, or pay attention to politics. I definitely didn't at that age. But as someone who's a bit older now, those are things I actively look for in a Pokemon game. Doing this also inadvertently adds a ton of dark humor, which I love. Like going back to the daycare example, it makes total sense that the reason why Pokemon are leveling up is because they're secretly being forced to do manual labor. It's hilarious because it retroactively makes you, as the player, look really stupid for ever trusting this shady looking guy. But of course it's still also really twisted and dark. But despite how massively different the game is in terms of tone and dialogue, it still feels like the canonical Kanto region from Fire Red, just from a different perspective. There's very much a behind the scenes feel to it. Like, how did these guards get so thirsty? What makes a super rod so super? How does a sea captain get seasick? It shows a lot of stuff that Red doesn't get to see, but you get to see as a rocket grunt. It does this with characters too, and it makes them way more human and likable in the process. For example, they show how deeply insecure Blue is, or how broken Giovanni's family life is, and the reason why Agatha is so spiteful. It gives explanation to a lot of the things that happened in Fire Red that Red didn't get to see. It made me see the original game in a completely different light. Despite how closely interconnected this is to the original Fire Red though, it still feels like its own game and a completely unique experience. Instead of getting badges, you get promotions. Instead of Pokemon centers, you have rocket hideouts scattered throughout the region. Instead of challenging gyms, you have missions, and so on and so on. Honestly, I could gush for hours about how amazingly written everything is, but I don't want to get too deep into spoilers, and I still need to mention how good the gameplay is. So unlike traditional gameplay, you have the option to steal Pokemon. What this means is that you can choose to either be a wicked villain who steals from everybody and the grandma, or just stick to traditional catching and be more of an anti-hero. This adds a whole new layer of gameplay with exclusive items or events depending on what side you pick. What I really love about this is that they made it way harder to be a good guy than a bad guy. Because if both were equally difficult, then obviously more people would choose to be the good guy than the bad guy. Constantly stealing basically ensures that you never need to grind and always have a ton of money. Because in this game, you can sell Pokemon, haha, but they also made battles give extremely low amounts of money. Honestly though, being the bad guy is way more enjoyable in this game. Going Rambo and turning into a supervillain is so fun. At the same time though, the game doesn't shy away from making you feel bad. For example, basically the entire first half of the game you can only steal from women and children. There's still that moral imperative, and that's what makes the good guy path still appealing. This morality system also adds a ton of replayability, since characters have different reactions depending on whether you choose to steal or not. For example, if you choose not to steal from Blaine, he'll notice and he'll thank you for it. If you do steal from him, he has different dialogue. Beyond just dialogue, there are also some events that can just flat out never happen depending on your choices. Notably, there's this mission to rob the Pokemart that can only happen if your bounty is above a certain point. So if you choose to be a good person, you can't do that. And that's just one example of many. Having different playstyles like this make it way easier to go back and replay. This is a bit smaller, but I also want to point out the great quality of life improvements they added. They have the physical special split and moves from future generations. They also replaced trade evolutions with simple item evolutions. And in the case of the bad path, you basically don't need to grind. Again, all of this contributes to way easier replayability, and just an overall funner game. Things that I feel like could be improved, like a better post-game or better endings, I feel could be fixed in a sequel or an update, so I'm not gonna talk about that too much, especially since by the time this goes up it might already be fixed or announced, who knows. Also, the bounty system is a bit broken because you can repay your debt pretty easily if you know your way around the game mechanics, so I think they should, add something to prevent that from being abused. I also saw some complaints on Reddit about the story being too absurd, but I couldn't see it. I mean, yeah, the story does get pretty crazy. Like, it starts out with you robbing little girls, and by the end, it's just like, whoa. But this is Pokemon, a game with magical pets, weirdly powerful children, and that's not to mention all the stories they already have about the universe ending. Things are already pretty crazy in official Pokemon, and I don't think this game is much more absurd than that. So, TLTW, it has a great premise, witty dialogue, lovable characters, clever gameplay, world building, and an extremely good plot. It's amazing. I didn't want to delve into spoilers because that would just be like robbing you of the experience, so if you haven't played it already, you're missing out. And yeah, that's it for the video, hope you guys enjoyed. Oh hey, welcome to the credits. So I just want to quickly say that in the credits below, I'll have a link to the ROM Hack's official site so you can easily download it for yourself. It really is an amazing game, so you should try playing it. Also, if you like the music right now, it's a remastered version of Burbank City, and I'll link to that below too. Right now it's kind of an experimental phase of my channel, so please bear with me. Right now I'm kind of just doing like reviews of games that I just happened to pick up recently, but I do want to try getting into analysis, and of course there are also the animations too. So yeah, I hope you stick around, and thanks for watching.